Please.
Is that right?
Morning.
Just relax, please. Focus on the tip of your nose. In the early stages of meditation, the mind needs a focus. And spiritualists of the past would ask you to focus on the tip of your nose. Pavana Guru, air, the divine. Breathe from your navel, nice and slowly, please. Thank you very much for joining me, giving me this opportunity to serve you. Thank you. It means a lot to me. Let's just relax. Let the stress just fly away. Breathe in, breathe out. Remember, whichever religion you belong to, you must stay there. We're all one, we're all beautiful. We have one Father, all of us. Every divine soul is beautiful. Every divine soul. On this platform, we will go through some amazing stories of the saints of the past, only simply to get encouragement and direction. The biggest problem we have is that the only direction we take is from our mind. I think. The mind is polluted by Maya. So your advisor in your mind is Maya, no one else. And as long as that remains, we will not understand the beauty of spirituality. So spending time with wise, blessed souls, if you ever meet one in your life, is paramount. Absolutely a must. But the right soul. Not somebody who is full of ego, somebody who is after your money, somebody who is after fame, somebody who is wanting followers. No, keep away. Somebody who is dividing you, keep away. Ekkat roop phire parshanna, koi na kisi jiha. We're all different, but we're all one. As no one fingerprint is the same. Every fingerprint is different. We are all different, and it's beauty in diversity. We have one life, just this life, and we need to make it count. Happy Easter. To all of you. Just relax your mind, please. Just relax. There is a spiritual text from the Sukhmani Sahib, the Psalms of Peace. Anak tapasya kare ahankar, narak surg fir avatar. Anak tapasya. Anak means unlimited meditation and austerities. If they are practiced in the soil of ego, then you will go into the life of reincarnations. There will be no more than just karma, no more than that. If you are a spiritualist, I do warn you that please take this on board. Let's go back. Let's go way, 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 way back. Let's fly back into time. Into Treta Yoga. Yoga meaning the cycle of time. The second cycle. The first being Sat Yuga. This Yuga was 2,163,102 BCE before Christ. This Yuga lasted 3,600 divine years. Which in today's term would be 1,296,000 human years. Treta. The average age of a human in Treta was 10,000 years. And it is said that as we come towards the end of Kali Yuga, which is the fourth cycle which we live in, as we come to the end, the average age will fall to 22 years. Treta means a triad, three. Treta was representative of the three avatars of Vishnu. They were Vamana, Parshurama, and Rama. These were the three avatars of Vishnu. Treta was the era of gods and demons. Occult powers were very, very strong. And the great Mahabharata, the war of the great Mahabharata, started in Treta. In Treta, there lived a rishi by the name of Keshav. And in the jungles, he performed much penance and meditation. One day he went to the village, and whilst wandering in the village, he sets his eyes on a young, beautiful girl by the name of Diti, and he developed a wish to marry her. The girl agreed, and they got married. Diti gave birth to two sons, Hiranyakeshiva and Haranyakash. Haranyakash is the king we will talk about today. They had a sister, and her name was Holika. And this is where the concept of holy started from, Holika. She was a sister of Haranyakash. The eldest brother of Haranyakash, Hiranyakeshiva, died by the hands of Varaha, who was one of the avatars of Vishnu. It was a land where kings would fight. Just fighting was a normal, raiding kingdoms, taking over kingdoms, pillaging. And this frightened Haranyakash. Much fear entered his heart. And for his own welfare and his own kingdom, he started to think, what could he do to combat this fear, this possibility? So he decided to go into penance, austerity, meditation. Both the anger and the fear and the resentment became the baseline of his meditation. A true practitioner of meditation desires nothing. Love is sufficient. Love is the only requirement. It's what they can give into the relationship, not what they can take out of the relationship. So, to gather occult powers, Haranyakash went into intense meditation and austerity. Meanwhile, Kyadu, the wife of Haranyakash, was carrying his child. This child later was known as Prahlad. And Prahlad has a very special significance in Hinduism and in Sikhism. So during her pregnancy, she stayed with a very famous sage of that time, whose name was Narad Muni, in his ashram. And daily she would listen to the sermons of Narad Muni. And slowly his teachings started to have a profound effect on her and her unborn child. As a consequence, when Prahlad was born, he became a devoted follower of Ram. Ram meaning the one divine Shakti. On the other hand, the penance of Harnakash, his austerities, became so pleasing to Shiva, to whom he was praying to, that in his happiness, Shiva asked Harnakash, is there anything that he desired for his penance? Harnakash immediately took advantage. You see, one thing as a spiritual practitioner, please understand, your subtlest desire will be acknowledged. In the world of divinity, every effort you make will be acknowledged. So we have to be very, very careful as to what thoughts we carry and what our motives are. Very important. Your motive is emancipation and no less. But people sell themselves short. I have seen that with many spiritualist masters, many. And my master used to say to me, no, son, your journey is much further ahead. Don't look left, don't look right. Whatever powers you see or you may receive at any one time, go ahead, become humble as he was himself. So for a spiritualist, this is very important to understand. Do not get caught in the trappings of Maya. And because Harnakash's meditation was simply based on fear and revenge and anger, he said, if it pleases you, my Lord, then grant me this boon, that I do not die in any residence, outside, inside, neither do I die during the day or night, or by weapons, or by demigods, or demons, and so on. These wishes were granted, and Harnakash thought that he had become invincible. So invincible that no god or demon could ever destroy him. He comes back to his kingdom and immediately declared himself as the one divine God. After all, who can kill him? He will not die, he thought. And that all who lived under his rule must no longer chant the name of any other god other than Harnakash. Jal Harnakash, Thal Harnakash. And in fear, people started to chant his name. He brings his wife and his child back to his kingdom and tells them that they must worship no one else but him. But this was unacceptable to Prahlad. And secretly, he carried on with his meditation on the one divine. When Prahlad was 8 years old, he was playing with his friends. And Harnakash, his father, heard him repeating the name of Ram, Ram, Ram. On hearing this, his father called him in and said, son, from now on, I am the divine. I am God. So meditate on my name. And he went to reason with him, to encourage him only to recite Harnakash as his mantra. The young Prahlad replied, "Father, I love you with all that I am, but I cannot replace you. Ram is Ram, you are you." This infuriated his father. So blinded was he in his own ego, in his own confidence, in his own power, that after many times trying to reason with his son and all failed, he instructed his servants to kill his son. So the servants took Prahlad to the top of a mountain and threw him off. However, Prahlad, his focus, his heart was devoted to the divine. And it is said in the scriptures that as they pushed Prahlad over the mountain, the child fell into the arms of the divine Lord. A very similar story that happened to Jesus. And no harm came to the child. Then Prahlad was thrown into the deep oceans. And again, very ancient scriptures state that he was protected by the waves, and they gently rolled him onto the shore. His father then instructed his servants to mix poison in his food to kill him off. And they did exactly that. But yet, again, poison had no effect on the young child. Prahlad was then placed in a den of poisonous cobras. The snakes started to play with Prahlad, wrapping themselves around him but not striking at him. And a very similar incident happened to Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, when he was lying in the sun and a cobra came and, yes, spread his hood over the young child Nanak to shade him. And at every instance, when there was no harm to Prahlad, the anger of his father, the embarrassment of his father just became worse and worse. He was then placed in front of an angry elephant to be crushed to death. But the elephant picked the child up and placed him on his back. And this was also a narration of another famous saint who was thrown in front of a drunken elephant. And the name of Prahlad became very prominent. People started talking about these miracles. And this took the king over the top. One day, reaching the extreme limits of his anger, his ego-driven anger, Harnakash decided that he would personally oversee the slaughter of his own son. A pillar was constructed and was heated until it turned red hot. And so intense was the heat from the pillow that it scorched the ground black. Anything near the vicinity of the pillar started to scorch. Prahlad was called in, and his father said, "Prahlad, this is your last opportunity. Change your allegiance. It is me or the pillar. And the little child was looking around, not knowing what was going on, but an innocent devotion to the Divine Lord. And the guards were standing at a distance, poking and jabbing at the little boy, forcing him towards the heat of the pillar. As the child Prahlad looked at the burning hot pillar, he notices an ant walking on the pillar. And in his innocence, he thinks, this pillar cannot be hot. If an ant can walk on it, so can I hold it. Little did he realize that this was the divine reassuring him that nothing will happen. He looks at his father and said, Father, you are not the divine. I cannot and will not change my mantra. Everyone gasped in amazement as Prahlad put his arms around the pillar. And nothing happened. Enough was enough for Harnakish. This was the ultimate humiliation. And in his anger, using a long mace, he smashes at the pillar. As the pillar cracks open, the divine in the form of Narsingha appeared. Narsingh means half man and half lion. He grabs Harnakish and puts him across his knees and roars at Harnakish, do you know who I am? Yes, replied the frightened Harnakish. Harnakish, is this day or night? Roars Narsingha. Harnakish looks outside. It is neither day nor night, it is dusk. Are we inside or outside? Neither. We are on the thresholds of the palace. Am I a man or animal? Neither, replied Harnakish. Do I have a weapon? Rose Narsingh. No, replied the terrified Harnakish. The divine goes through all the wishes that had been granted. All the conditions had been met of his device, and with his claws he kills Harnakish. Prahlad became a king, and he is also acknowledged to be a saint of the highest order. This narration took place in Treta, the second cycle of time. And in the scriptures it says, Harnakish doshtar marya Prahlad taraya. So what do we take away from this? Two things. One is the devotion of the child, and the second is the ego-driven Harnakish. The objective of any spiritual path is to release the ego. To release the ego and merge into the divine. Release the ego so only your pure self remains. Imagine when you were walking and you have a smallest little bit in your shoes. You cannot walk. You will need to take the shoe off and shake it to remove whatever little bit is in the shoe. Even the smallest little bit of dust will become an impediment in your journey. Spirituality is exactly the same. The smallest little bit of ego becomes a big impediment. ਜਿਉਂ ਜਿਉਂ ਚਲਤ ਚੁਬਹਿ ਦੁਖ ਪਾਵੈ ਜਮ ਕਾਲ ਸਹਸਰ ਡੰਡਾ ਹੈ. Ego becomes an impediment. There is a spiritual formula we need to understand. Man minus ego equals God. God plus ego equals man. It does not matter how high your spirituality is or what planes you've reached. If your ego is with you, you are no more than an ordinary person who is still in the laws of karma. Ego is the self-assertion of the me. I am. That my dominant individuality is separate from all. And any spiritual growth can only take place when we transcend past the self that has been conditioned by Maya. The habitual self, the blind self, the self that is fast asleep in the three modes of Maya. How many of us are happy inside? We preach, we teach, we are showing other people the way to happiness, but do we ever look at ourselves and see where we are? Who are we kidding? Who are we fooling? So we have to rise above that part of the self which is fast asleep in the warmth of the illusion. Remember, we are bliss. And you will find no greater bliss than what is already inside you. You are the rainbow of the divine in its many different colors. The path is within you, a direct path, which will be realized, understood, when you are with the company of blessed, pious souls. This understanding over time in their society will become clear. But remember, ego is very cunning. Maya is very cunning. The Maya uses this understanding to strengthen itself within you. It'll creep inside you. You will not know. You will carry on doing all your religious activities, and yet you will not know who is driving that. And then it takes over in a very subtle and silent manner. It doesn't shout. And it takes you away from humility to a perceived sense of humility. But remember, the joy that we derive from our spiritual practices in the influence of Maya will be very short-lived, very short-lived. And in the end, they will be full of misery. Maya is that cloak that gives us a sense of humility. And as a consequence, our every word, our every action is infused with ego. And yet we do not realize. Ego represents itself in many shades, my friends. It hides deep within us. And ego will be very agreeable. Our mind will think and the ego will agree. Ego will pretend to be our friend, but ego, a true spiritualist will understand, is a very dangerous companion. Ego will follow us around like a shadow. Ego understands and senses our weaknesses and will use them against us. Ego will give you a sense of achievement in the spiritual world. It will make you feel good in the pursuit of your spirituality. But yet rarely it is sabotaging, stunting your spiritual growth. In your feel good factor, you have been sabotaged by ego. And many millions of spiritual practitioners of spirituality have been trapped. They are the prisoners of this ego. And only a few will escape and practice spirituality in its purest form. Our path was very simple. From somebody to nobody, from nobody to everybody. From the I am to I am nothing, from I am nothing to I am everybody. That was the journey. However, somewhere along the line, the spiritual path, we fell asleep and became victims of ego. And the path became from me to a more stronger identification of the me to the totality of I am, me, I am. When you are in the company of blessed souls, they will show you the many shades of Maya. Because they have understood, they have made the journey, they have been there. But sadly, people meditate, not realizing that deep within, their soul is surrendered to the outside world. We are trying to connect to the divine, but our soul is surrendered to the intoxication of Maya. And yet we take comfort from the practice of spirituality. Please realize, to detach ourselves from the sensory world is of paramount importance. To live in this world, but not to be of this world. Yet this is no easy task. Why? For many lives, the soul has been attached to the outside world. Many, many lives. And it has become one with this experience. The soul knows no other way. It has lost its belonging. And only when the soul begins to retire from the experience of the sensory world can it go to the land of spiritual loneliness deep within. And only then will it begin to contemplate itself as a complete, separate experience. And only then will the riddles of spirituality begin to be understood. Two of the greatest conundrums for a spiritualist is the outside world and the inner world. We are trying to please both. But let me make it clear that will not happen. The true pilgrim's journey of a spiritualist will only start once you have decided which world you want to please. Is it the world of the divine or the world of Maya? And only then will those worldly experience comprehensions open to us. We cannot have our feet in both boats. You cannot live for the world and live for the divine. It doesn't work. You cannot serve both masters. You cannot have one foot in the world and one foot in Maya. It doesn't work. Imagine a bird that has been caged in a wire cage, or any animal that's been caged. And for many, many years, it's been kept in this cage. And then someone decides to release that bird, that animal, open the door and let it fly. Let it fly into its natural element. And so they open the doors to this cage. What happens? The animal, the bird, is frightened to fly out. It does not understand anything else other than just the confinements of the cage. And even when the door is open, the bird will not fly out that easily. It'll simply flutter from one side to another, holding on. And this is how our soul is. The divine has opened the doors. This is why we have this body. Eho teri osar, eho teri bar, Kad Peter tu na murar. This is your time. The doors are open. Whichever religion you belong to, your doors are open through your scriptures, through Jesus, through Brahma, through Buddha, through Guru Nanak, through Allah. Those doors are open. But we are holding on to this world. We are the ones that want to stay in this cage. If you want to achieve the heights of meditation, then fly out. Leave the cage of this body. In other words, leave the sensory world. We have to live in this sensory world. We have to work. We have to do business. But our focus is elsewhere. And soar towards the higher planes. If we cannot fly out, then we will lose our opportunities. The doors are unlocked for our spiritual freedom, and the divine is waiting. Once you fly out, then your journey in meditation will start. Then you will become a true disciple. But due to the lack of this understanding, our soul will never be free from this body cage. And therefore, it will not fly high to our higher self. It will remain in the three gunas, the three modes of Maya, Rajguna, Tamguna, and Satguna. All our spiritual practices are practiced under the subtlest layers of the five thieves. Kam, Krodha, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar, lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. And they are the chains which are holding us back, holding us, tying us down into this cage, preventing us from our spiritual growth. And we may think that I get up in the morning, I meditate, I go to the temple, that I'm freeing myself. But the reality is we live in the constant state of prevention, because the five thieves are with us all the time. My master once shared a story with me, which I will share with you. He said there were two drunken men who decided to go for a row in a boat, fully intoxicated. They got to a lake and jumped into the rowing boat. They grabbed the oars and started rowing. All night long they rowed, thinking that they were going somewhere. But as the dawn broke and the effects of alcohol wore off and some sense of normality came to their brains, they realized that they had not gone anywhere. They had wasted so much energy just by rowing in the same place, because the boat was still chained to its moorings. They did not unchain the boat. This is exactly how we practice spirituality. We are attached to people. We are attached that somebody listen to me, somebody take my wisdom, somebody respects me, I want people to follow me. A spiritualist will have this inside them. And they are attached, chained, and yet they'll sit there doing Vaheguru, 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 Jesus, 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 Hari, 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 Ram, Ram, Ram. They're rowing away. And one day they're going to wake up and realize they haven't gone anywhere. Because the first rule of spirituality is look at yourself and ask one question: what is it that is preventing you from moving forward? And these become our bondage. They are the chains that hold us back. Only once we break those chains will we understand how to love people. We will understand how to meditate. And at the same time, preparing our soul journey ahead. We will do everything in a beautiful way. In a beautiful way. We will be living in the world. We'll be living with the divine. Understand one thing. Lust and anger are two of the most powerful weaponries in the armory of ego. Lust, anger. Two. And they manifest themselves in many, many different ways. Sadness, hatred, arrogance, selfishness, greed, a closed mind, intolerance, mistrust, impatience, resentment, fear. Ask yourself, which energy are we a prisoner of? Which negative energy is holding us back? How can you heal yourself and go forward if you do not understand what is holding you back? In the case of Harnaka, she's lust for eternal life, compounded in anger and resentfulness and revenge towards the deity that killed his brother was the baseline of all his spiritual penance. And understand one thing, anger takes many forms: passive, an explosion, moral anger. People get angry because I'm religious and nobody's listening to me. That's anger. Habitual anger, just being angry for the sake of being angry. Self-harm, vengeance, many, many types of anger. Anger will take the role of judge and jury. Remember, we are discussing Harnakash. And the executioner. And when we are angry, more often than not, we are resentful. And when we are resentful, we do not forgive. So anger and resentment are two gates. Understand, please, two gates. And the two gates are locked together, firmly shut by the lock of ego. Ego is the lock, resentment and anger are the two gates. And on the other side, if we can open these gates, we will go into the land of eternity. So in ego, we stayed locked in Maya. The divine on one side, within us, and the Maya also within us. But we are on the wrong side, my friends. Do not lose yourself to the seductive promises of Maya. Maya is very seductive. Who doesn't like to be acknowledged? Who doesn't? Who doesn't like to be, yeah, that's a good person. Oh, they're spiritualist. They're this. It's very seductive. But understand the sweetness offered by Maya is mixed with bitterness, extreme loneliness, and full of fear. At the end, that is where you will end up. Because true fulfillment only lies in the hands of the divine. So lift your heart, break free. This is what we are going to do. We are trying to do. Break free from this cage of this body, meaning live in this body, enjoy the world, but understand how to live in this world. And carry this great virtue of divine values inside you. And practice those divine values, however difficult. An 8-year-old child was challenged by his father, but he's stuck to his values. So must we, whichever religion you belong to, you must stay there and you must stick to those values. Don't talk about them, be them. And once we allow the soil of those values inside us, we will spiritually grow. Are we perfect? No. Yet, in our imperfections, we have to move on. Do not let our imperfections deter us from our goal. Learn to live in the shadow of the divine. And then in time, our mind will be lifted from the very narrow sphere of life that we are in into the immense beauty of the divine. The journey starts with faith, not understanding. Okay? And slowly your faith will be replaced by divine love. There is no place for understanding. We cannot understand the ways of the divine. Remember, we are divine. We are not ego. We are not anger. We are not lust. We are not greed. We are not. Look around you. Meditation. How do we meditate? Look around you. There is divine poetry everywhere. You don't have to lock yourself in any one room. Whether they're the turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean, the majestic peaks of the Himalayas, the great forests, the great lakes, the morning birds in the tree. There's divine poetry everywhere. Just look. Quieten the mind and listen to the songs of nature. Immerse yourself in this visual beauty of the divine. When you have a drink of water, when you sip it, thank the divine. When you walk into your house, put the keys in your house, thank the divine. When you look at your loved ones, thank the divine. Make divine the part of your life. Every aspect of your action, once it becomes dedicated to the divine, it'll be devotion in motion. Learn to live and walk in the divine. This is the most beautiful way of meditating. And whatever the challenges, like Prahlad, stay devoted, please. This body is nothing. This body will become dust. You are the spirit. You are the soul. You are not the body. This is the true way of a spiritualist. This is the infinite reality we must understand. We do not belong to Maya. We are the children of the divine. And that all our spiritual practices must be practiced from the soil of our divine virtues. God bless you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bahadur Baji.
It was and you made your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to serve you. Thank you. I am no teacher, remember that. I am no Baba, no Guru, no teacher. I am the servant of your feet. I am no more than the dust of the Sangat at your feet. You people put value to my life. And I thank you for that. You people gave me the opportunity to share with you the words of the divine. I thank you for that. And I thank you for that from my heart.
Thank you, Baji. I was wondering, today's prayer, is Geeta online? Would she be able to deliver today's prayer?
Yes, I'm here.
Shall we have a little chin wag for about 5 minutes, 2 minutes, James? And then Geeta can finish.
Whichever, yes, in terms of the order of things. Does anybody have any questions today regarding today's meditation?
Let's just talk